Welcome. Welcome to the San Francisco Dharma Collective. My name is Augusta, and this is an opportunity to rest into presence and meet what's arising. Always, always a gift, and when there's turmoil, maybe even a greater gift. Because when we move through the world from that place of greater presence and grounding, we're naturally more skillful. It's just what happens. And of course, you've all experienced, I know as I have, that we can get spun around or turned upside down or activated, agitated, however you want to language that, and then, oh, there we are, a little less skillful. And that's human, and there's no problem with that. And to continue to remember and remind ourselves that it's all conditioned and that we have this agency to inform how we're spending this moment. And when we're spending that moment coming home to ourselves, cultivate attunement and alignment with things as they are in this moment, we're in agency. And that's freedom. That's freedom. So let's sit just for a couple of minutes to arrive here together, and then we'll have an opportunity to introduce ourselves, and then we'll get a longer opportunity for practice. So please enjoy these 3 bells and just 5 minutes of silence and then 2 bells. So being with yourself in whatever way is supportive for you. Maybe it's staying seated just as you are. Maybe it's changing how you're sitting. Maybe it's standing up or lying down, or for some reason it would be supportive for you to walk. Great. Listening into the wisdom of your own heart, mind, and body for this brief 5 minutes of coming home to ourselves. And may these bells support you and guide you. For many of us, allowing our eyes to close is quite supportive, and thereby we have one less sense door to attend to. And for some of us, gazing down or at a blank wall or at the flame of a candle or a leaf or a blossom. Gazing in an expansive, soft way at nature, emptiness, fullness. Allowing these 3 sounds of the bell to call us home to ourselves, to call us home to the present moment. Listen, listen. The sound of the bell brings us home. In the words of Thich, Nhat, Hanh, and in the words of Sayadaw U Tejaniya, awareness is our true home. Come back home where you belong. Noticing how the heart, mind, and body respond to the sound of the bell. Maybe 5 minutes ago, when I invited the bell 3 times, this heart, mind, body responded in a particular way. And then maybe after 5 minutes of relative silence, hearing the 2 sounds of the bell, the heart, mind, body responded in a particular way. And maybe those are quite different from one another. Maybe there's ways they're similar. What I invite here is the noticing of this conditionality. Like, oh, something has occurred, nothing to do with you, right? I brought this thing close to this thing, and because of their substance, something happened. And then that sound, my hope is it was transmitted through the microphone and through your speakers. And then this heart, mind, body received it, and there was a response. That's happening all the time, right? It's not always these 2 things that are coming together to cause something happen, but maybe it's someone cutting you off in traffic, or someone smiling at you, or maybe you're biking along and you're female-bodied, and then there's a little girl on the back of a bicycle in front of you. She keeps turning around very excitedly, and so you invite your bell, and there's this connection that happens. And sometimes it's quite joyful, and sometimes it's not so joyful. And most of the time, if you're anything like me, you just miss it, right? And so our practice can allow us to notice it. Like, oh, this is this conditioned experience arising. It's nature. It's nature. It's what's happening due to what's happening. No problem. As I said, and I'll probably say a few more times, sometimes it sucks, sometimes it's great, and sometimes it's somewhere in between, and those are the ones we miss more and more. But I think quite often we miss the fact that it's all just nature. It's all just conditioned. And of course, each moment that we're experiencing conditions the next moment. And as we cultivate presence, as we cultivate mindfulness, as we cultivate awareness, sati, right? This term from the time of the Buddha, sati. We're just naturally more skillful. It's the natural response of this heart, mind, body when there's attunement, when there's awareness, when we're actually present to what's here right now, to how this heart, mind, body is receiving and responding to the present moment. And with that in mind, I'd like you to notice what's going on in here right now, right? Some resonance with what I'm saying, some dissonance, some story, maybe you missed some of it, maybe you're riveted, maybe you've completely checked out. Great, know that, right? Know that. That's what's arising internally in the moment. And just practicing meeting it. That's what I'd like to focus on today, meeting what's actually arising in you in the moment. And sometimes there will be resistance, sometimes there will be kind of a chasing after. Okay. And like I said a few times, sometimes there'll be a missing it, and sometimes there will be what Sayadaw U Tejaniya calls wise attention. There'll be love, or kindness, or interest, or curiosity, or gentleness, or softening. Know that too, right? We're so conditioned to notice greed, aversion, and delusion, or to practice to notice them anyway. There are these wholesome heart states or wholesome mind states that also can be noticed. And as they're noticed, that conditions more arising of them. It's just what happens. There's no doing around it, right? You can't make that happen or make that not happen. It's the conditioning or the nature working. And noticing how it feels in your own heart right now, right? Resonance, dissonance, oh, okay. What is she talking about? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. is all welcome because it's all the experience of the moment. My primary teacher these days is Andrea Fella, and some language that she offers often is that mindfulness can be like a very good friend. Just meeting what's here. Not trying to fix it or poke and prod, but just like, oh, hi. Or for me, certainly in this moment, offering that and feeling what's happening in my own heart and body, it feels like mindfulness can feel like giving ourselves a hug. So, as with everything that's offered in the collective and offered by me, feel free to take what you like and leave the rest. And if you're willing, I invite everybody to feel what it feels like in this moment to wrap your arms around your body. And to meet what arises in response to this action, this physical action. Allowing the heart, mind, body, nervous system to feel, to experience this embrace. To feel it, to let it in. Oh, I am worthy of love, of care, of kindness, of attention. Guess what? Radical act. I can give it to myself. It's not dependent on anyone else. We feel the warmth and the gentle pressure. And then we remember that everyone, maybe Augusta opens her eyes once in a while, but that everyone's eyes are closed, so ain't nobody seeing us. We just feel that love. It's a kind of love that only we can give ourselves, quite actually. We can receive and feel love to others, other humans, other mammals, other non-mammals, other beings, the universe. And there's a special kind of love that only we can give ourselves, this presence and kind attention, recognizing and attending to our needs in a way that no one else can, because they can't really know in the same way that we can learn to know. Yeah. And then if you're willing, allowing the arms to release, noticing the residue of the embrace, and then switching hands and doing it again. So maybe the left hand was on top and now the right hand is on top. Just feeling that hug. And noticing what else is here with it. Grief, love, joy, acceptance, resistance. Okay. It's all welcome. It all has a place here. Inclusivity is a word that Thich Nhat Hanh uses to translate a Pali term. It's often translated as equanimity. Inclusivity. We can welcome it all. Upekkha or Upeksha is the Pali or Sanskrit term. Well, here we are practicing inclusivity. It's all welcome. Joy, love, grief, hate, discomfort, comfort. Hello, being human. And loving ourselves with all of that, all of the complexity, all of the nuance. I got you. I'm here for you. Cultivating this ability, learning to be a good friend to ourselves. Learning through practice. And sure, we'll mess up, no problem. We're human. Feeling the embrace, the pressure, the warmth. Noticing what's here. And allowing the arms to release. And noticing the residue. Everything leaves a residue. Resting, opening, observing. Oh, it's like this. Knowing that we are knowing. Yeah, thank you so much. Energy, certainly in white America. I know it's not limited to white America, but being a white American, that's what I know. There's so much energy in white America that we're just supposed to be happy all the time. Like, fuck you. I'm not happy all the time, bitches. There's shit going down. And grief is a part of life. I mean, thank goodness that there was this guy, Siddhartha, that lived 2,600 years ago that was like, all right, I got everything I need. And he was a prince, people. I got everything I need. And the way the story goes, he was a hetero male cisgendered prince. So like, oh, you got all these bitches, you know, like anyone in the harem that you want. And then he had this gorgeous wife that he was married to, who had this beautiful white elephant, and she was the best at this. And like, they went to some competition, they both won everything, and then they were betrothed to one another, and then they made a beautiful baby, and like, and he was like, what? This is a crock. This is a crock. And he left the palace, and he journeyed, and, you know, he had some whatever journey. I'm not trying to talk about that too much right now, but one of the core things that he realized, recognized, discovered on earth, it wasn't like this thing that like was born from him, but he came to see it and was able to articulate it in such a way that it's gotten passed down these 2,600 years. And you know, we know whispered on lingo, so who knows exactly what went down, but the way that it's been shared with me and that I understand it, one of his many, many teachings is the Four Noble Truths. Four. Just four. And the first one, the one that was, in my mind, kind of like the most valuable, or the beginning, maybe the most insightful, I don't know, I'm buying these most at the moment, but anyway, the first one is that there's suffering. And suffering is to be known. Suffering is to be understood. That's the beginning of the path of practice as laid forth by the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. Suffering is to be known. And I have found over my time of practice that like, oh, that's actually the way forward. It's like, oh, this is a moment of suffering. And I have cultivated many practices such that my capacity to meet the suffering has increased. And maybe we'll play with some of those tonight. We'll see what ends up happening. This is how I teach. I like to meet the moment and see what emerges. See what emerges. And so that will work for you or it won't work for you. And that's all good. There are so many teachers at the collective, so many styles, so many teachers. But the capacity can grow to meet the suffering. And freedom can come from that, right? It's amazing. You know, there's no coincidences, but my mother, it's March. So I guess we're at like 16 or 17 months now, but my mother died at the end of November of 2023. And it was awful, of course. Like, how is it not awful? And thanks to practice, I already had a meditation practice and a Dharma practice. I was deep in practice. Buddhism, 12-step, my Quaker roots. I turned to practice and I was able to just rely on, go deep in practice. And so for me, you know, my life is, but not, you don't know, but my life is better than it's ever been because of this intense time in practice. For me, my mother, the loss of my mother's death has been kind of a springboard or a catapult into deeper practice and deeper transformation and more shedding of some very unskillful habit energies that I developed through my ancestral lineage. I grew up in chaos and have very unskillful coping mechanisms to navigate that chaos. And we don't all have the opportunity when a loved one dies to meet that moment with almost 20 years of meditation practice. Right? That's not going to be the case for most people who grew up in the United States, most white people across the globe. We don't have a lot of training or conditioning toward that. We have a lot of avoidance tactics and a lot of running away from and a lot of putting on a happy face or chin up or, bearing down. And maybe there's a place for that. It's not what's helped me. I'm not trying to knock that approach. But this approach that we're practicing this evening that you all have shown up for, it's recognizing there is suffering, First Noble Truth, and cultivating our ability to meet that suffering. The second Noble Truth is that there is a cause of suffering. And the way that I understand the Buddha communicating that cause, the Pali term is tanha, which can also be translated as thirst, often offered as craving, that there's a cause of that suffering or dukkha. That First Noble Truth is dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, discontent, ill ease, often translated as suffering. There's a cause of that dukkha, and that is clinging and craving. And I, for years, thought of that very simply as wanting things to be other than as they are. Fighting reality, being at odds with reality. Craving, chasing after, craving is the kind of catch-all for tanha, or the second Noble Truth, often experienced as chasing after or clinging, or aversion, pushing away. They're really the same thing. They have a very similar kind of response, but they're two sides of the same coin, and they're seen maybe more clearly as one or the other. And it causes suffering because we're not in alignment with things as they are. We're not in the stream allowing the unfolding to occur. We're fighting reality. Yeah, you always lose when you're fighting reality. And then the third Noble Truth is that there's an end of suffering. There's a cessation of suffering. Nirodha. What if I told you there is a cessation of suffering? Not a denial, not an escape, but a cessation of suffering. And then the fourth Noble Truth, Magga, or path, is the Noble Eightfold Path that leads to the end of suffering. And maybe that sounds lofty. Maybe it sounds like, yeah, I know that's possible. Or maybe you have a little bit of the conditioning that I have experienced plenty of. Well, clearly I'm doing it wrong because I'm still suffering. It's like, okay, that's just a story. It takes a lot of time. This is not a quick fix. It's not an overnight thing. And the vulnerability that's already been expressed here this evening feels to me like a step on that path. Like, oh, this is what's here. Hello. We're already turning toward it instead of running away from it or trying to skip it, trying to push it down or away. My mother, she loved the arcade carnival game Whack-A-Mole. Does someone be familiar with Whack-A-Mole? She loved that game. And I think that's how she spent her life. And I have more and more compassion for that in her now. I'm not interested in spending my life that way. I did not see it lead to freedom in her. Yeah, so thank you so much, Scott. I hope a little bit of what I said was helpful for you, and I really appreciate you naming your suffering in part to meet Alan and share the collective experience of suffering. Ain't no one getting out of here alive. We're going to suffer. The goal is not to not suffer, right? Not suffering is not the goal, but rather cultivating our ability to meet this present moment. Whether it's Sukkha or Dukkha, right? So Dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, dis-ease, blech, like the yuckiness. And Sukkha, sweet, peaceful, content, happy, right? These things both exist in our lives. And maybe you've noticed, or you will notice if you start to pay attention, that if we try to push one of them away, of course it's the dukkha we try to push away, the sukha gets pushed away also. We can't actually choose what we're going to miss. When we start to miss life, we miss life. We miss the joy as well as the sorrow. And this capacity to be with things as they are makes it so that we can experience both. And maybe we get knocked over and then we come back up, or we lay down for a long time, we get caught in a spiral and we're stuck, right, in a whirlpool or a vortex. Like that happens. And over time, the conditions change and it softens at some point. It's impermanent. It's all impermanent. You, me, emotions, feelings, thoughts, it's all impermanent. And can we ride the wave? Can we be there with ourselves in the storm? And of course, sometimes it's too heavy. It's too much of a burden. It's too big of a load. And we need something nourishing or something uplifting. Language for that I found supportive is to spend time in beauty. And I don't know what that will be for you, but after we finish going around, we're going to do another go around where we get to name what spending time in beauty means to you. And I'll start that, but I'm going to pause. Thank you so much for offering and for listening. I really appreciate it. And noticing how it feels in your body. Really, so for me right now, there's tension in my neck, kind of a excitement, and then a fear. Oh, did I overshare? Is it helpful? And a trust, and it settles. It's okay. Tension arises and passes, like everything. Feeling your heart and your gut and your body. It's all welcome. Inclusivity. Welcoming all the parts of ourselves. Yeah. This little rub I'm doing with my left hand on my left knee, it's a cultivated practice that just sprung up from me without any intention. It's a form of tenderness and compassion and love and care. It's subtle, but it can be so impactful. That's what this was too. There's so many forms. Maybe we'll talk about that more also, but let's keep going around. I'm sorry that your pet is suffering, and that's beautiful, right? Like there's dukkha. Here it is. And so many of us, as you just articulated, there's kind of a first response to that dukkha, which the Buddha spoke of as the second arrow. It's my fault, right? I did this. I'm a terrible person. Whatever, we have different conditions of how that works out. Someone else would be like, oh, it's not my fault, and they would get all defensive and whatever. Or some different moment we might respond that same way. There's the thing that has occurred. The animal is limping. And when we have freedom from that second arrow, wisdom can emerge. Oh, I'm going to take care of this being that I care for. And here you are beautifully communicating to us the wise action that then is available when we're not shedding all over ourselves. It's like, oh, right? But maybe we have a habit of shitting on ourselves. So first it's like, oh, I am shitting on myself. Okay, thank you. And then there's space for the wisdom to emerge because we recognized the second arrow. We recognize that habit energy, that conditioned mind. And then the recognizing of it can give us the space to see what the wise action is in the moment, or sometimes words of the Buddha are offered as appropriate response. And then you took that action, right?
Yeah.
And that's freedom, as you need, like, oh, and now I'm relaxed. Because I've done what needed to be done in this moment with this thing, right? We can't fix from forever ago, but here we are in this. And we can't fix what's coming up next, we're not there yet. Beautiful. And I don't hear any spinning out about like what's gonna happen next. Right?
Right.
Like, I know you can remember when that used to be the habit of mind.
Yeah.
And it's not. Because these other conditions have come into your life so that you have a path of practice and a trust in that. It's beautiful. Thank you, Jorge. I'm really glad to see you. Letting yourself have the space to just feel that. And not worry about the next thing. Not freedom from that planning. Or recognizing the planning and noticing how that desire to plan feels in the body.
Yeah, it feels like anxiety.
Great, and can the anxiety be there? Or can the feeling be there? And maybe even freedom from the idea of, oh, this is anxiety. Because that can have kind of negative energy.
Right.
So it was like, oh yeah, there's something in here. Hi, can that be here?
Oh yeah.
Can we be aware with the experience? Feeling the gut and the heart, feeling the body settling into the chair. And you all can play along with me, right? This is relevant no matter what's happening inside of you. And I'm sure many people can relate to Tom sharing about, oh yeah, it's the conceptual idea of being present with myself, sure. But like, oh yeah, feeling the sit bones, or feeling the buttocks, feeling the feet, feeling the arms, feeling the hand, holding the mic, like, oh, hi, body. There's a body. There's a reason that the first foundation of mindfulness, there's a reason that the first foundation of mindfulness is the body. Because the body is always, this is not the only reason, but the body is always here in the present moment. It's a great entry point. You just feel the body resting. And then whatever is felt there, whether it's a tingling somewhere, or a contraction, or an expansion, or tears in the eyes, okay, hi there. Feeling it, experiencing it directly, this is what's here. I know for me, as I slow it down a little bit, I can feel more. And I can trust more what's going to come out, and I get a little bit more freedom from that planning mind. And now, so increase attunement or awareness, more alignment into the present, or not even a change?
Because it's more of a heaviness.
Heaviness, like a comfortable solidity, or like a grief heaviness, or both?
Heaviness at this point.
Yeah. So feeling that, like, oh, that's what's here, heaviness. And then, of course, in order for you to tell me, there has to be some conceptualizing around it to give it the word heaviness, and you can drop that and just feel it. Be with the direct experience. Yeah. Are the rest of you following me? Is that landing? That being with your direct experience? Yeah. You go with me, Jorge? Yeah, that is the practice. There's lots of the practice, but like, yeah, that's the practice. That's a manifestation of practice. Like, oh, hi, this is what's here. Yeah, and thank you for that articulation of the grief and the compassion and the being with and the love. The way you articulated that, I hope many people could hear that. They meet and support each other, right? As the love is felt, there's more space for the grief to come up. And as there's more space for the grief to come up, the love can meet it with greater compassion. And they can feed each other in a really wholesome, nourishing way. And then when it feels like it's too much, we change the channel. We go back to feeling the comfy wool socks, right? Or the warmth of our hands holding one another, or the blue sky. Or as Thich Nhat Hanh would offer, the dandelion was holding my smile. Like, no, we forget sometimes, but something as simple as what we call a weed can bring us joy if we let it, if we give ourselves to it. It's such a rich, strong color, so many little parts. And then the greens are edible, like they're nourishing food. Like there's so much in there, but just the stupid weed, right? So much of it has to do with our perspective and our attitude around it. Thank you very much, Tom. Yeah. So one more go round and then we'll settle into practice. I really want to name that the being with is beautiful and powerful, and I find that that's where the chemistry or the magic, the alchemical response happens, is the being with. And we are not always able to do that. And that is not a problem, that is not a mistake. That is a time, in my experience, to spend time in beauty. And sometimes it's a simple little thing, right? It's not like super heavy and overwhelming, just like you're starting to get a little, and so it can be simply feeling the feet, feeling the hands. And so I invite you to do that now, to just notice the experience of the sensations in the hands. Stroking the hands with one another can be really lovely. It's so simple. And it can feel so good. And no one is going to look at you like you're a weirdo because you're doing it, which is pretty cool. And if you really give your attention to it, it's so nourishing. It's so nourishing. And we can just feel our hands, our feet. We can just feel our hands too, but what happens if you simply feel your feet without doing anything? Can just the simple act of giving your feet your attention, your kind attention, your love and care, can that lift the heart and nourish this being? Hello, their feet. Or maybe we up the ante a little bit and we touch some gratitude for the feet. These feet that carry us on our bicycles or as we step. Maybe we swim or skate. The things that these feet allow us to do, hike, or simply stand. Hello there, feet, thank you. And noticing how the heart, mind, and gut respond. When things get really swirly, and we're in what Andrea Fella refers to as a rabbit hole, but I really appreciated Scott's talking the spiral just goes down and down and down. And it's like this vortex or this whirlpool. When we get caught down in that, I was reminded by her today in a group session that the neuroscientists have recognized that once we stop feeding an emotional experience, that it takes 90 seconds for the chemical response that's been released in the body, maybe in the brain really. I don't know where all this stuff happens. I think that they have different ideas. Sometimes there's a thought that it's the gut, sometimes there's a thought that it's up here more, but wherever it's happening, 90 seconds for it to clear. So if we can give the mind and the heart something neutral to do for 120 seconds, just 2 minutes, there's enough space in there for it to clear. So that can be useful to remember. So a simple practice of looking at corners when things get really squirrely and they're not getting any space. Just looking at corners, maybe taking a beat at a corner. In this room here at the Dharma Collective, there are lots of corners. I can name some of them, but wherever you are, there's probably a lot of corners because we live in this built world. And so here there's lots of little attic doors, and then they have 2 layers of trim on them. So that's already 4, 8, 16, maybe not quite 36, 28 corners just on one of them, and there are 4 of them just on that wall, right? Any door has 4 corners. The doorway has 4 corners. If there's trim on the doorway, you get another 4 corners. So let in your mind go corner, beat, corner, beat, corner, beat. If there's any trim where the ceiling and the wall meet is a corner. These chairs have lots of corners. Perhaps as you engage, you allow this heart, mind, body to actually engage with these corners, you might notice a settling in your system. And maybe you don't notice it, that's fine. You're not doing it wrong. It's just a practice. Might need more time. There's a shelf. The shelf has at least 4 corners. An outlet, a junction box, a frame. And if the frame has a mat, get 8 corners. A freestanding wall, corners abound. And you track them, noticing it, corner, corner. So you can put that in your pocket if you want, and maybe it didn't really land, that's also fine, but it can be super powerful. Also looking out at the horizon. The distance, I don't have that possibility here at the Dharma Collective, but maybe you do where you are, to just look out. Windows, space, the space of the sky, the vastness, the space in between branches if you have any trees nearby. It's like, oh, there's enough room here for all of this. And then we can physically bring ourselves to beauty, whether that's going outside and sitting somewhere, or going for a walk, or just walking out the door and taking in some fresh air. Or maybe you could be in something that we call nature. It's all nature. But, you can touch grass, as they say these days. You can go touch grass. If you're in the city, you can go to the Golden Gate Park. If you're anywhere on the coast of California, you can go to the ocean. We're surrounded by beauty. And for some of us, watching a dance performance or dancing is a form of beauty. Or going to the theater or acting is a form of beauty. Going to the art museum or making visual art with crayons or watercolors or oil paint, whatever your medium is. Touching beauty through our own actions or through one of our sense doors. Making a meal with attention. Eating a meal with attention. Eating an orange with attention. Peeling it, it's available. It's available in simple acts, and they nourish us. And we need to be nourished. We need to be nourished. We're going to get depleted, and then we allow ourselves to be nourished. And I don't know if any of you have had a routine of working out, but if you have, you know you need your recovery days, you need your rest days, and you need to refuel. And I know you all have devices because we're living on them these days. The battery drains, and then we plug it in again so it can recharge. It's not a problem. We're going to get drained, we're going to get fatigued, we're going to feel overwhelmed. Okay, and then we resource and recharge. And we find the balance. We find the balance. Okay, so last go around for the moment, and then we will go into a different type of practice. So continuing to remember to check in with your own heart, mind, and body, to tune in, to open to what's actually happening inside of you, right? As we tend to that fire of remembering, it starts to burn of its own accord. It's there. It's kind of, you're all aware. You're aware of my voice or you're aware of your body. Mostly we're not aware of being aware, but we can cultivate that awareness, and then it turns out, oh, it's just available, and it arises due to conditions. I practiced for years trying to remember to be mindful. It didn't work for me, turned out. I tried hard, and then I felt like a failure because I wasn't happening, and I was still being really unskillful with my speech. And I didn't mean to be. Didn't want to be. I wasn't trying to be that way. But the conditioning was such that was the habit. That was fuck you. Like, that was what I learned to survive. And now, it's almost like mindfulness is there accompanying me. She's just there with me. And I lose touch sometimes, and then it arises again. I just keep putting the drops of water in. And it's like the joints are just lubricated now. Yeah. It happens over time, gently, gradually, as we put the effort in. Maybe it's kind of akin to growing up a plant. I don't know, there's some great story about a carrot seed. Maybe some of you know it. I do not know it, but I do know that carrot seeds are very small. So you plant the carrot seed, and if the soil is sufficient and it gets enough water and it gets enough light, a carrot's going to grow in time when the conditions are sufficient. But if you keep checking the carrot, let me dig it up and see how it's doing, that condition makes the conditions not sufficient. But the watering and the sun and the patience and the curiosity and the interest, then the conditions are there. Okay, so here's the question. As you continue to feel into your body, into your heart, into your gut, how do you spend time in beauty? Or how might you intend to spend time in beauty these next 7 days before we meet again? Or how have you spent time in beauty in the past, and how might that inform your intention for the future? The mind is like ice, like slippery ice. It was first taught to me as Teflon, but I'm trying to move away from the disgusting references like that. But the mind is so slippery, like ice, for a pleasant experience. It's like, whatever, who cares? It's just gone, just gone. And that's because of our evolutionary journey, right? Those things that could have been our ancestors that were not chasing after, but they were fixated on the pleasant experience, they got eaten, and they didn't bear offspring. They didn't go through this journey to get from the single cell organisms, these Homo sapiens sapiens, right? But the ones that were alert and diligent and noticing the slightest thread or rustle in the leaves or in the water, they're the ones that survived. So we have a hardwired instinct to be like Velcro for the unpleasant. What's that? And it's like stored it is stored in our nervous system. All those past threats, all those possible threats. Oh, we got those good. We don't need any help with remembering those. And at this stage of life, in the stage of the evolutionary journey, we can really benefit from spending time tending to the pleasant, like soaking it in, attuning to it, being with it. And as we do that, we create new neural pathways. They say that which fires together wires together. So if we start to notice a pleasant experience and we have the practice of noticing it, the pleasant experience and the noticing start to arise together, and then it becomes a more more well-trodden path of pleasant experience, and we kind of fall into the rut of pleasant more. So we're not always falling into the rut of the unpleasant. Both experiences are going to continue to happen. We're not trying to skip out. And we can tend to noticing the pleasant, whether it's the birds or the garden. It's like, oh, beauty, hi there. You are welcome to. And our capacity to be with this shit increases. It's like magic. Thank you. We meet ourselves where we are. That desire for things to be other than they are just makes things as they are worse. It's like, yeah, it sucks right now. You know, there's been a crumble and a decay. And maybe as you keep practicing to meet that truth of the present moment experience, maybe more compassion arises, or more tenderness, or more space, for this is how things are right now. Right, to know this is a conditioned experience, and that it sucks. Yeah, I mean, thank goodness some of us are comfortable looking at how fucked up things are, because if we were not looking at how fucked up they are, we wouldn't have the capacity or the possibility of changing them. Right, we need to be able to look at it. It's beautiful. And to trust the actions of body, heart, mind that emerge from us. Right, to trust our own unfolding of experience. You know, we just had the opportunity to hear 6 different manifestations in this one moment in time. They're all valid. They're all worthy of care and attention. You are worthy of your care and attention. And it's a powerful message to remember. It's really going against the stream. It's not what society wants us to believe, right? Society, specifically capitalism and consumerism, want us to believe that something out there is going to make us feel better. And we have noticed that doesn't really work. It's an inside job, as they say. So thank you so much for bringing your presence. I hope that you remembered occasionally to be in practice with yourself, to notice what was arising in your own heart, mind, and body as you listened and as you shared. We only had 5 minutes of so-called meditation in this hour and a half together, but maybe you were mindful the whole time, or more of the time than those 5 minutes. Maybe not. That's okay. It's a practice. It is a practice. No practice of the Dharma would be complete without an offering of merit. So tuning to yourself. Any posture is great. Just checking in with your own heart, mind, body in this moment. And noticing how it feels in there. Spaciousness, contraction, ease, numbness, whatever's there. Any benefit that may have been generated through practicing together, through really bringing our presence to ourselves and to one another for this hour and a half. May any benefit that may have been generated be offered out into the world to relieve the suffering of the world. May the fruits of our practice be of benefit to all beings and bring peace. Thank you so much for your practice. It's really a gift to be able to share the Dharma and to be in a field of practice. I appreciate your presence, and I look forward to being with you next week. And for those of you who can make it on Sunday, take good care of yourselves.